It is great to see you again, and if you want to stick around until the end of the video for an explanation of where I've been for the last 3 weeks, be sure to do so. But I do not want to waste any time in today's video. I want to get right into discussing Visa stock, and we're going to do so by jumping right into their income statement from their most recent 10Q. So let's get right into it. And it's funny looking at these numbers again because I wanted to make this video 3 weeks ago, but here we are. I still want to discuss it because I think it's important, and we're going to go line by line here. I've highlighted a couple of things. So starting off at the top, revenue for Visa was up 17% compared to this time last year. A very strong quarter for Visa stock. G&A was up 7%. That was in blue. That was not as high as I thought it was going to be, so not too bad. Total operating expenses were down, though, 4%. So you know what that means. Revenue was amazing. Operating expenses were down. So operating income was absolutely amazing. Up 33% compared to this time last year. And just like the operating income, not much of that was lost on its way down to the bottom line. We have net income up 31.5%. Such a strong quarter for Visa. Just looking at these numbers, and I'll be sure to provide you with my projections for Visa through 2029. So be sure to stick around because you'll get to see just how amazing these numbers are after you see my projections. But let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the next statement that I want to see for Visa, and that is the balance sheet. And I'll go ahead and tell you right off the bat, the balance sheet was not as good, anywhere near as good as the income statement, but you'll see that as we go down the line here. Cash and cash equivalents were down 28%. Do not want to see that. Total current assets were also down 16%. So of course, if you're losing cash and if your assets are down, total assets were down 5% in this time frame. Now, I went down here and had a look at the total liabilities, and that was incredibly good to see that total liabilities were down 4% in this time period. Now, that was not enough to save the equity, however, because total equity was down 6% in this time frame. When I had a look at the total debts divided by the equity, I got a ratio that is 1.7. Again, anything under 1 is ideally what I want to see for this ratio. It's starting to creep up towards that 2 figure, and anything over a 2, and I immediately start to ask some questions because that's usually a sign that a company is not focusing on growth as much. So while not anything alarming or something to be overly concerned about right now, it is something that I'm going to keep an eye on at least over the next couple of quarters to make sure that doesn't creep up any more than it has already. But okay, the final document that I want to discuss with Visa is the cash flow statement. And let's have a look here and see exactly what's going on. But this one will be far more brief compared to the other 2 statements. So when I had a look here, I just highlighted a couple of things. Net cash provided by operating activities was down 3%. So nothing, again, nothing alarming, but it was down, something that you don't want to see for this number. Now, I really didn't want to, get into the weeds here when it came to this statement, so that we're going to go right down to the middle here. Net cash used in investment activities was a negative number, which is what I want to see because that means that the company is focusing on growth. Like we mentioned with that debt to liabilities ratio, I want Visa to focus on growth here for the next couple of years, honestly, and we'll discuss why in more detail when I give you my projections later on. But coming back to the cash flow statement analysis, the next number that I wanted to have a look at was net cash used in financing activities, and this was a very large negative number, which again is what I wanted to see because this number being negative shows that the company is giving money back to investors. And you can see that based off of 3 lines here. Repurchase of common stock, debt repayments, and of course, Visa is a dividend paying company, so those dividends are increasing with every passing year, which is again what I want to see as an investor of Visa stock. Now, after the earnings, Visa did spike up a little bit, but Visa is still down about 6% year to date. So 2026 has not exactly been a stellar year for the company by any stretch of the imagination. And in truth, I wanted to dive a little deeper and see exactly how Visa has been performing for me personally in my portfolio. And when I did that, the numbers were a bit shocking because for a total return on Visa in my portfolio, I am up 26% with the company. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, well, that's, what does that mean? Is that good? Is that bad? Well, keep in mind that that total return includes dividends that have been paid out to me as well as capital appreciation on the stock. And very important to keep in mind, the next question that should be popping into your mind is, okay, well, how long have you held the stock? Because if you've only held the stock for about a year, and if you're up 26%, that's amazing. But unfortunately, that is not the case. And that is because I have held a Visa stock since 2020. So a little over 6 years now with a total return of 26% is not good. It's actually pretty bad if you ask me. And when I incorporated the time that I have held Visa into that calculation, that's where I got the annualized return, and that is only up 4%. In other words, I'm really not even keeping up with the S&P 500 with Visa in my portfolio. Visa has been underperforming now by a large margin because ideally I want to be beating the S&P 500, and that is on average a year 7 to 10%. So to be up 4% basically per year based on this calculation, something has got to give with Visa. Either something is wrong fundamentally with the company, or is Visa about to blast off here in the next couple of years? And well, this is where we get to the fun part because I am going to give you my projections through 2029 for Visa. Now, when I did a deep dive into Visa over the last couple of years, I have their projected revenue for the next, 3 years to be plus 11% on that top line. Now, keep in mind, they just had a stellar quarter where the revenue was up 17%. So if they are able to keep up that kind of performance, I will have to adjust my numbers and I will not be upset for having to do so because it was a really strong quarter that they just had, at least when it comes to that top line. For net income, my projections through 2029 would be plus 20% a year for the bottom line. Again, keep in mind, they just had an amazing quarter recently where the net income was up 31.5%. So I may be a bit conservative when it comes to these numbers. Visa might already be on the upswing for all I know. But I want to be conservative because this wouldn't be the first time that a fintech stock has let me down over the last couple of years. I'm looking at you, PayPal. In my opinion, a fair PE ratio for Visa over the last couple of years has been around a 30 PE ratio. So given that, I used a 25 for the lower range and a 35 for my bullish numbers here for Visa. That would give me a projected stock price for Visa at the end of 2029 on the low end, $565, and on the high end, my bullish case for Visa would have them almost at $800 per share. And that is why I continue to buy Visa, and I will keep buying this stock through 2026 so long as the stock is under $300 a share. Easy. That's a no questions asked. I am buying the stock because even on my most bearish case with these projections, I'm seeing around a double up on the stock price in the next 3 years. Now, again, I could absolutely be wrong, so do not just listen to some guy on the internet because he thinks or he's giving his opinion on what a stock is going to do. Now, I am looking at PE ratios, looking at the history of the stock, but past performance is not an indicator of future performance, and I want to make sure everybody understands that. One thing that I do really like about Visa, and I always say that I'm not a dividend investor, but somehow I always end up talking about dividends in these kinds of videos. But Visa has a 5-year dividend CAGR that is about 15%, if not a little bit over that. Now, I don't expect Visa to keep up that kind of growth for the next, let's say, 10 years. But even if they were able to increase the dividend by 10% every single year, that honestly would be incredibly exciting for me as an investor in Visa. Because, well, yes, I do believe that the company has a lot of growth opportunities. Right now, here in the middle of 2026, it seems like the only thing that people are talking about is AI. And at least when it comes to Visa, they're not really known as an AI company. So I feel like that is what is kind of holding them back, at least in the short term. But that's all I have when it comes to Visa. For those of you who stuck around until the end of the video to figure out where I've been the last 3 months, my life has just been kind of hectic over the past month because my wife and I, with my 2 kiddos, decided we're going to move to a separate city here in Georgia in the United States where I live. So that was probably the first week of May, if not the last week of April. Then we had Mother's Day. Then we had the week where we actually moved. Then we had Memorial Day weekend. And I was actually going to hold off on making this video because, as you can see, there's nothing in this room. I have everything on the floor. I think you can kind of see the printer here. I still need to get all of the furniture, my bookcases set up. So I was going to hold off because I was like, the room is just so bare. It looks terrible. But I wanted to talk about Visa so badly that I figured, you know what? I'm just going to make the video, and I hope everybody is forgiving, especially with the sound quality, because I don't really think the lighting is going to be a problem. What I'm worried about is the audio. So be sure to let me know, how does the audio sound, and I can make adjustments here over the next couple of weeks. But a massive thank you to everybody who has been supporting the channel. I actually think my subscriber count grew during this little hiatus. So thank you so much to everybody who supports me on this channel. And be sure to stick around because I plan on continuing my schedule here now that everything is a little bit more stabilized. But thank you again, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.